Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this PSP Sub-A meeting. I just have a few things to say before we move on to the formal agenda for today's meeting. Firstly, the formal legal standing of the meeting is being held under the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority and Police and Crime Panel Meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020. Take account of these regulations, Bristol City Council has produced a set of virtual meeting procedure rules, and these are available on our website. This means that the decisions made by the committee will have the same standing and validity as if they had been made in person at a meeting in City Hall. So can I just remind members to ensure that their sound is muted when they're not speaking, and after they have spoken, please remember to mute your sound again. If you have any questions during the meeting, please physically raise your hand so that we can see on the video that you wish to speak. So I will now hand over to the chair for this meeting, Councillor Pickersgill, to go through the formal agenda. Thank you.
Everyone, and I think we'll go through introductions just because there may be lots of people watching who don't know who everybody is. So if I can start off by introducing the councillor members who are in the meeting. So Tom, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yep, Councillor Tom Brooke, Councillor for Bishopston and Ashley Down.
Thank you. Estella?
I'm Councillor Estella Tinknell, Councillor for Lockleys.
Steve?
Councillor Steve Jones for Stockwood Ward.
Thank you. And I'm Ruth Pickersgill and I'm councillor for Easton Ward. And the officers supporting us today, we have Oliver.
Oliver Howson, Democratic Services.
And we have Lynn.
Good morning, Lynn Harvey, Legal Advisor to the committee.
And Sarah.
Sarah Flower here as Licensing Policy Advisor.
Thank you. Abby. You're muted, Abby.
Sorry, Abby Holman, I'm presenting the report today.
Thank you. And Tom Gray is helping us with webcasting. Okay, so looking at the agenda, we don't have any formal apologies, I don't think, for absence. Do we have any declarations of interest? Minutes of the last meeting. Are there any issues that anyone wants to raise, or can we confirm the minutes of the last meeting as a true record? I'll take that as confirming, thank you. Public forum, we don't have any items for the public forum today. So we move to item 6, which is suspension of committee procedure rules relating to motions and rules of debate. We're not excluding the public until the second part of the meeting. So the first part of the meeting is going to be held in open to the public. So we'll go straight to agenda item 7, which is the application for the grant of street trading consent in Eastville Park. So I'm going to ask Abby, if you don't mind presenting the report, please. I think we're expecting somebody from Parks as well, but if you can take us through the main report, and then maybe they'll be here if there are any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I have messaged the officer that we're expecting. She is back online now, so I'm hoping she'll join us shortly. In the meantime, you're quite correct. This is an application for street trading. This is similar to some of the previous applications that you've seen, in that it's an application in principle rather than a specific application for a specific trader. And I'll go through the sort of reasons behind that and the background. So the application is made by the concessions team of Bristol City Council. They are on behalf of the authority responsible for issuing concessions to trade on council land, and these are premium locations where it's anticipated that market value can be achieved by way of a concession process. It's achieved via a tender process where applicants bid for the site, and the bids are assessed against specific criteria for each site to ensure the successful applicant has a suitable offer for that site, because as you'll be aware, there are different sorts of requirements and different challenges or issues with each site that you consider. So the successful applicant would be subject to a contract issued for up to 3 years, and that would be managed by the concessions team. Because the location falls within the street trading policy as a consent street for the purpose of the street trading legislation, it means that any trading at this location without the benefit of a street trading consent would constitute a criminal offence. And so in order to streamline the process for the successful applicant for tender, the concession team has submitted an in principle or provisional application for the identified site to the licensing team in order to establish whether it will be suitable. And these concession sites are treated in exactly the same way as any other street trading application, meaning that we do a full consultation on them to gather information and to find out what issues there might be, or for the public to and responsible authorities to raise any concerns that they might have about the site. So if granted, the site would be put out to tender and the successful applicant would be required to submit a fresh application for street trading. The licensing manager would then consider dispensing with a consultation if appropriate, and generally that would mean if the times and offer were the same as in this application. And the applicant would still be required to demonstrate that they were a fit and proper person by undertaking the other steps, including holding the relevant food hygiene certificates or obtaining the relevant food hygiene level, and also provision of basic disclosure. So they do still need to satisfy those steps. You have some detail of the application at Appendix A along with the location map, and I'll run through that in a second. And normal consultation took place with regard to this application. We consult with a range of people, including local businesses and residents, and a number of different RAs. And it's also advertised on the council's website, and the applicant places a site notice at the location, which was completed. 2 responses were received in relation to this, which are attached to Appendix B. If you were minded to grant the application, officers would recommend, in addition to the standard conditions that you apply, the 2 conditions at paragraph 11 are also applied. So the consent holder not to use a diesel or petrol generator and to be powered by an alternative source, and the consent holder not to be permitted to trade on occasions when other events or festivals take place at the site or which encompass the site without the explicit written permission of the event organizer, just to prevent any clash or overlap with that. So a representative of the concessions team hopefully will be available in just a second, and I will see if I can contact her again. And in terms of the application, it is Eastville Car Park, so it's located by the rapid charging hub. The type of vehicle would potentially be around 1.75 by 2.4 meters in that area. And it would be, the proposal is that it would be kept off site outside of trading hours and to sell hot and cold drinks, hot and cold food and ice cream, and nothing outside of those options. And the maximum hours would be 0700 to 2000. There would be some seasonal requirements as well. So they would potentially be trading shorter hours in the winter, for example, and longer hours in the summer, which is why you've got that wide range of hours on there. And you have a location map as well in that Appendix A. With regard to the representations, both of them do mention an ice cream van. What I would say is that ice cream van, as far as we're aware, is unlicensed. We don't believe that has a consent or a concession with the council. And so we were unaware it was operating until it was raised in these representations. So the viability of the ice cream ban is not a relevant consideration because it is potentially operating unlawfully. That's everything that I have to say. I can see that Sue from the Parks and Concessions has joined us. So Sue, I've just presented the report as I've sent it to you. I don't know whether you want to outline the kind of the background around this site maybe, or there's some seasonal requirements around hours and things like that. Maybe you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. We're having Wi-Fi problems here this morning. But yeah, so basically we've had an ongoing project to increase concessions in parks. And the main purpose is obviously to generate income to maintain the parks and green spaces. In Eastville Park, it is a slightly different project because it's linked to the rapid charging hub. So the concession stand was paid for out of that project, as were the toilet block that is there as well. And the idea is that the income generated from the concession stand will maintain the toilet block moving forward. So that's the kind of the premise of it all. I mean, generally in Eastville Park, there has been quite a push for more services. is a huge park with very little for families to do. It's got a very small play area. It didn't have any toilets until recently. You know, it hasn't got very many. It's got lots of unused or boarded up facilities. So the Friends group in Eastville Park are really trying to invigorate the area and bring more people in, more use of the park, which will then help to see, for people to see that there is a use for that park, and then to start to investing it in parks and green spaces. And the concession stand or a food provider within that park will help to bring people in and to give some vibrancy to the park. And what we found in other parks also is that having something of that nature in a park can reduce the antisocial behaviour that happens within some of our more larger but underused parks, and because they've got a kind of presence within the park. It's a little bit unfortunate, I suppose, that where this has been placed is in the car park rather than in the middle of the park, but that was due to the rapid charging hub, and you know, having that paid for us meant that that's a cost that the kind of council didn't have to put forward. So yeah, the project as a whole has been really successful in other parks. There's been loads of concern. I've been here before. There's been a lot of concern about putting burger vans or other kind of fast food outlets into parks. And that's just not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to bring in something that will fit that community. We're trying to really look at what the park is like and what would suit that park, and trying to create a really quality project. And everybody that we've got operating is either gained the Bristol Eating Better award or is working towards that. And we're moving away from that kind of traditional ice cream van to people who are just providing something a bit better, really. And that's what we would be looking for within Eastville Park, is that something a little bit different, because that's the area, but something better than, you know, it's not fast food, it's, you know, just something that families can buy for their children and be assured that it's not an unhealthy product. So
Sue, could you just talk about the split of the contract in terms of how you do the weighting for the concession contract, how that's changed?
Absolutely. So what we do at the moment is we have 70%. When we do the tender, we ask people to put in a submission for price and then a submission for quality. So obviously income is important to parks, but within the tender, it's not the most important thing. We look at the 70% of the evaluation is carried out on the actual product, what people are doing with their waste, what they're doing with recycling, where they buy their products from, whether they employ local people, whether they are local. So all of that comes into the tender and is more important than the price that somebody puts forward. And in a lot of instances, we have found that we have offered it not to the person that's put forward the highest price. We've offered it to the person that is providing the best product for that area. I think St Andrews Park is a prime example. That wasn't the highest price bid that came forward there, but it's an absolute quality product, and we really wanted that to continue there, and it works really well in the environment.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's really clear. I mean, having spent decades there at the playground with my daughter, and then decades afterwards, well, not decades, but years afterwards with my grandson, I feel like I've spent half my life there, always desperate for a cup of coffee. So I declare that I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea myself, for very selfish reasons. And at one point I even thought I ought to start a cafe there myself, because I was so desperate to have something. And I think it's a very neglected park, and it needs something. Can I just ask a question though first before I open it up to members? Have you spoken to Friends of Eastville Park? Because I know they're very active. Are they in support? They're in support of this, are they?
Yes, I've spoken to the chair, Sarah, and she is very supportive. She's my contact, and she's been kind of going back and forth between the Friends Committee group and myself, and she just said that they do provide something themselves. They do a coffee morning once a month, I believe, and they're linked to trying to get more members into the Bowls Club. So they don't see that it being a big competition for them, because that's more of a small event that they do once a month. So they're really, really supportive. They really want people to use the park, and they want to see more happening there.
Okay, that's helpful. And I'm surprised about the ice cream van, because I think it's been there at least 30 years. So if we haven't noticed it before. That's a slight concern. But
Yeah, I think, Chair, probably what's happened is he's been operating and not caused any issues.
right.
And obviously the neighbourhood enforcement team sort of risk assess what to do. So if he's not caused any issues, it's probably not been reported to us, and so we haven't been aware, I would imagine.
Right.
I think that, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that we did have an ice cream van operating there, which we ended the contract because it was an operator that we no longer work with. We ended that last year. So it's probably somebody that's now jumped on that opportunity.
Right. Okay. Right. So do any members have any questions or any comments on this one? Stella?
Thank you, Chair. Eastville Park's not in my ward, but it is adjacent to my ward. And a number of people who live in the area do have concerns about noise, you probably know. It's in a kind of natural bowl, which does kind of amplify. This is a very small concession, and that's unlikely to contribute to that. But I suppose the things I'd like to emphasise, which you've already mentioned, Sue, which I'm really pleased to hear, which I think is really important, that wherever possible, we have a local employment policy, and that whoever takes the concession is contractually obliged to employ locally, and to actually kind of set some terms of what that means, because I mean there's local and there's local, isn't there? So it could, I'm not talking about someone driving all the way from Bath, say, but to ensure it is genuinely within a particular kind of couple of miles radius. The other thing for me is well, waste removal and cleanliness is perhaps have we got ways in which we can ensure that that is actually undertaken by the person who has the contract for the concession? Because one of the things that concerns me is it's one thing going to remove the stuff that is immediately within their vicinity. What about a wider area? So if people are kind of moving away from the cafe or whatever it turns out to be, and then dropping litter within the park more generally, can we build into the contract a way in which they have some responsibility for disposing of that litter? Yeah, I think that's all I want to say. You mentioned about a contract also with, well, employers we would not want to have any association with. Obviously, we know there's been a particular ice cream manufacturer who a few issues recently. So I guess we do need to make sure that whoever is given the contract has impeccable credentials in that regard.
Chair, as I mentioned, obviously whoever the successful person was would still have to apply for the street trading consent and would still have to go through that sort of fit and proper person status under the street trading policy. So hopefully that would negate any concerns that Councillor Tinknell has regarding the potential previous issues that we have had with some traders.
Okay.
Yeah, and we haven't got them, they're not contractually obliged to employ locally at the moment. We do look at what they put into their tender, and that accounts towards their marks. It is something we can look at, though. I'm not averse to it. I think it's a really good idea. But they are contractually obliged to manage the waste within the site, and we work quite closely with our operations team to assess whether there's increased waste across the site. And obviously somewhere like Eastville Park is a huge site, so we need to be mindful that it could travel quite far. So I do work quite closely with our operations team, and we look at how we can manage that. I have to say that touch wood, we haven't had any problems in any of our parks with waste. People are, when we have raised an issue with the concessionaire, they have responded to it and moved to correct it. So, and that's been very rare, to be honest. So I think when there are bins provided by the concessionaire, people do use those bins.
Right, okay.
Yes. Okay, do Councillors Jones or Brooke have any questions or comments?
Yeah, so when the future kind of actual applicant is reviewed, you said earlier it will be under delegated by officers, assuming there's no differences to what we're looking at today. What if there's at what state, how will it kind of come to us if there's a worry about the fit and proper person side of things?
So we would simply refer it back to you in this fashion, Councillor.
How would it be identified that there was an issue, I guess is my question.
So they would have to meet the other requirements of the street trading consent. So the only thing that we would look at dispensing with is the consultation.
Okay.
That generally raises issues around, say, litter and waste or potential nuisance, things like that. The fit and proper part is really around the disclosure and barring service check, the basic disclosure that they have to provide to us, and also the food hygiene side of it as well. If there were issues around those, then we'd look to bring that back, or to have a discussion with Sue and potentially the winning concessionaire to see what those issues were and what.
But surely the public consultation could throw up some issues as well.
It would
specific applicant.
Unlikely, I would suggest. In my experience, no. I could fairly confidently say that no consultation that I've seen undertaken in my time here, which is 9 years, has ever thrown up issues around the individual or company running the concession.
Okay. Fair enough.
I would agree with that.
Particularly if we're talking about, the one that we've had previous issues with, that hasn't come through a public consultation, that's come through other means.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
I mean, I would just reassure you that we work quite closely with Abby and other members of the licensing team, so we are in constant contact.
And
Sure.
I have to say, in my chair's role, officers are very good at passing things by me if there's any kind of, if they're making a decision and they want to kind of double check on it. So Abby passes things to me quite often to say, we're thinking we're going to turn this one down, are you okay with that? So and if there's any sort of concern, I'll make sure it comes back to committee. So okay, Steve, did you want to ask anything, or are you okay? Right. Okay. Right. Okay. We don't need to go into private session, do we, for this? Does anyone?
Would be guided by your legal advisor, possibly.
Lynn, do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're going to deliberate, you should really go into private session, even if it's just.
Right. Okay. Right. So, Oliver, can we ask Abby and Sue to leave, or can you make them leave, please? And then we'll have a
Chair, because this is a publicly broadcast meeting right now, I think I need to put you in a breakout room that will not be public. So just bear with me while I arrange that.
Thank you.
You should just receive an invitation to move now. Right, and we'll see the rest of you shortly. Bear with us. Remember that you're still on public broadcast. Tom, I think we've got you shared screen for some reason.
It's. I mean, I assume you talked to the other Tom. It's a kind of holding presentation to let people that are on YouTube know what's happening.
So I'm here, but I can't see myself. I can see you, Tom.
Oh,
That'll be your settings.
Right. There's.
You get a switch from.
There you
Oh,
go.
here we go. Yeah.
I ended up going completely out then and having to come back in again. I don't know what happened quite, but anyway, are we all back?
No, I think we're still waiting.
Steve didn't know how to get out of the room because he didn't. Something's going wrong with his iPad, so he might be still stuck in there, I think.
You got to be careful to press the leave the breakout room and not leave the meeting.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Okay. So right, I've just closed the breakout room, so I think it should bounce Councillor Jones back in in the next kind of 40 seconds, which is not that helpful. Okay. So just got to wait for him to, but he will be back in about 30 seconds. Apologies.
Okay. So welcome back, anybody who's watching on the webcast. We're just about to deliver our deliberation, but we're waiting for one of the councillors to return, who was having IT problems. And here he is.
Aha, can you hear me?
Yep, you're back. Yep.
I'm still frozen, I'm sorry.
No, we can still see you fine. So can anyone who's watching in. So that's fine. Okay, so we've had a conversation. We're very happy to grant that concession. We think it will be a great improvement to Eastville Park. So thank you for bringing the paper, and hopefully we can take that forward. I think it would be useful. Those of us who are kind of adjacent wards could maybe kind of make that known to people that opportunity is available to widen the field of people who apply. So,
and obviously once Sue makes that concession available, it will be publicly advertised and through the tender process.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay, right. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Sue. Are you staying, Abby, for presenting the next one?
No, Chair, you have an enforcement report next.
Right, okay. Thank you. Right, thanks very much. We now need to come out of this meeting, don't we, Oliver, and come into the next one?
Yeah, for the sake of formality, Chair, can I just ask you to move the exclusion of the press and public before we close this meeting?
Okay, yes, can I move the exclusion of the press and public, and we'll return to private session. At what time do we return?
10:45, Chair, so around 10 minutes.
Okay, so we need to come in on the different Zoom link.
On the